Welcome back to our User Adoption Real Talk with the Experts video series. This is a video series where we cover the key findings from the report that we released earlier this year at UserIQ, which is the 2018 User Adoption and Onboarding Benchmarking Survey. So with this survey, we surveyed over 450 SaaS leaders. We got a lot of great info back on things that people are struggling with in user adoption and onboarding. And so today we want to focus on talking about time to value and some key stats that we found from that. So we have Matt with us today. So I'm going to go ahead and have Matt introduce himself. Just tell us about your position and maybe some projects you're working on, your experience, things of that nature.
Yeah, thanks, Kelsey. So my name's Matt Myszkowski. I'm currently the VP of Customer Success for EMEA at SAP, which is part of the Preferred Success organization. I have a team of approximately 30 customer success managers across EMEA who are responsible for delivering something we call Preferred Success, which is a paid-for engagement. It's high impact, high value, proactive and a prescriptive offering, ensuring customers get a full ROI on their investment in the range of SAP's cloud solutions. Prior to my time at SAP, I worked at a UK scale-up CX software provider called Ransom Rave. Prior to that, I worked at Autodesk, where I worked for probably about 5 years, helping to build, scale, and evolve their customer success offering across EMEA and APAC. Before my time in customer success, I worked for a variety of software companies in a variety of roles, from support to customer service to sales, pre-sales engineering, marketing, and more, searching for what I guess now know to be as customer success. And that's really my background.
Awesome, perfect. So one of the big kind of key stats we want to start with here is that 50% or 57% of the survey respondents we had said that they are either neutral, unsure, or really cannot measure their customers' time to value at all. So we were curious as to why you think that is, and then kind of backtracking a little bit, why is time to value something we should be measuring in the first place? Why is it so important?
Yeah, great question, Kelsey. So the onboarding phase is the first phase of the post-sales customer lifecycle. If the pre-sales phase was managed appropriately, and by appropriately, I mean that representation of the customer success organization was involved in those latter stages of the process, then hopefully your CSM is set up to be successful. The latter stages of that pre-sales process is the ideal time for a CSM to understand why the customer chose to make that purchase or investment in your solution, service, or software, and ultimately how the CSM will be working to execute on the plan that delivers that value. And the first test of that is the onboarding phase, where a poor experience dramatically decreases the likelihood of retention within the first year. And then I guess on the flip side, conversely, a positive experience sets you up for retention and hopefully expansion. The metric time to value, or time to first value, as I prefer to utilize in the onboarding phase, is arguably the most critical measurement for a CSM whilst onboarding a new customer. Optimizing for TTFV or TTV ensures your customers are realizing value in your solution, software, service quicker. However, the definition of value will mean many different things for many different customers. But it is exactly that. It is your customer's definition of value and not you as a vendor. And I think that's a mistake a lot of companies make. Use that pre-sales opportunity I referred to earlier to define what first value looks like for your customer. Ideally align a tangible value, metric, or measurement to it, baseline where you're starting from, and then just go all out to execute on it and ultimately deliver on that first value.
Yeah, that's great. I think we get so lost in the metrics. We have so many metrics that we're always looking at. And so when it comes to something like time to value, why do you think that's something that often gets put on the back burner, unfortunately?
So from my perspective, there's one reason, and it aligns to the continued evolution of customer success. And what I mean by this is that customer success over recent years has matured and developed from measuring adoption and consumption of software to now being about measuring the outcome of the adoption of such software. So while this is totally the right thing to do in my mind, it is considerably harder to identify and measure the actual outcomes compared with the relatively easy numerical data of adoption and consumption, i.e. the number of times someone logs into something, or the number of times someone uses a certain functionality within your software. That is relatively binary and easy to measure. That's especially true if you do not ask or get the opportunity to ask your customer what that value or initial desired outcome looks like. So it goes back to the first question. it's becoming more critical for a CSM who's trusted with delivering that value to your customer to understand why that customer bought your solution or service in the first place and what that value actually looks like for them. If you don't get that insight or the opportunity to ask the question what that value looks like, then arguably, how can you measure it? And that, I think, is a large part of why potentially companies shy away from measuring time to value. They just don't know what business problem their solution or software is addressing for them.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Very good point. I know you've dug into this a little bit, but kind of getting into the nitty gritty here. If there are companies that maybe have never measured a time to value, or if they just want to do it a little bit differently, what are some first kind of best steps, best practices for that?
Yeah, I'm going to be pretty blunt with this response. And my first thing that comes into my mind is just ask your customer. Ask them what they see as value using your solution or service. Why did they buy your product? Ask them what value looks like for them after the first 3 months using your solution, your software, or your service. But also understanding and respecting that there is different value for the different cohorts within your customer, and try to address the different needs each cohort has. I guess if I break it down a little bit further as something actionable that you may want to change, I'd go back to some of the points I've raised earlier. Start to understand your customers' needs within that pre-sales process. Work with your sales leadership to get greater exposure to the latter stages of the sales process and your potential new customer. For the customer, they're becoming familiar with the CSM that ultimately is going to be responsible for directing them through the onboarding phase, hopefully delivering that first value that we referred to. For your sales team, they're able to demonstrate a real-life CSM in a practical environment, which in turn provides greater credibility. And then at the end, as a CSM, you're getting to really understand firsthand what the customer's expectations are with your solution and service. And for me, it just sounds like a win-win-win for everyone there. The final point on this, all of this should be documented, tracked, and the actions assigned within a customer success plan of sorts. And there are different varieties out there that you may have in existence. But this ensures transparency and accountability, where you can take the opportunity in your periodic quarterly business reviews, executive business reviews, to keep score, overcome those issues and challenges that you may come up against. But ultimately, it gives you the opportunity to replay the value that you've delivered to your customer.
Yeah, definitely. I think kind of two big key takeaways for me out of that is that number one, don't overthink it. Like you were saying, just talk to your customers, and that team alignment, like you said, is something that's really important. Just making sure everybody's on the same page there. So this was super great insight into time to value. I definitely think there's some actionable items we can take from this. So I will be leaving some links to where you can find Matt in the description box, and I'll also be leaving a link to the full report. And Matt, we really appreciate your insight, and thank you for being here.
Thanks very much for the invite, and have a great day.